Why do we feel the need to constantly level up at everything that we do? Why is it that we can't just enjoy something without constantly measuring where we are against where we think we should be? I want to ask you, when was the last time that you did something because it felt good and only because it felt good? No goal attached to it. Not the usual justification, I'm working towards this level. I'm talking about just fun. It actually took 2 years away from something I deeply loved to figure out why. And that thing is, drumroll, surfing. But today, behind surfing, I want to talk about the way that we sometimes ruin things we love by turning them into solely performance.
You're listening to The Bold Beginner, a space for multifaceted women where we explore how to feel at ease in your body when you're being seen. If something here speaks to you, consider subscribing or leaving a review or a comment. It genuinely supports the growth of this space.
So as always, let me take you back a bit just for context. I started surfing a few years ago. As a matter of fact, I've always wanted to surf even when I was since my childhood. But when I finally got a chance to do it, I immediately loved it. I loved being in the ocean. I loved feeling the air, the salt in my hair, on my skin. Obviously the feeling of eventually catching waves, the whole thing. So what's the problem, you asked? Well, almost from the beginning, I had a certain trajectory in my head. I would do longboard first, because you have to, right? That's how you learn. That's the easiest path to learn. But then the goal was always shortboard. Shortboard was the real thing. Longboard was only the means to an end. And not so surprisingly, I was impatient about it. I wanted to move down in board size very quickly. I wanted bigger waves and I wanted to progress. And it just felt obvious. I wasn't even really questioning that. That's because that's what you're meant to do. So I thought you start here and then you go there as quickly as possible. So in this whole thing, I kind of forgot to have fun because fun wasn't the metric. Progress was the metric. And I guess in my mind, looking a certain way on a board was the metric, even though, of course, it was unconscious. And of course, if you'd asked me at the time, I would have told you that I was having a great time because I was at the end of the day. But it was more sort of, because there was this constant thing in my mind that I was, quote unquote, I was not there yet. It was this not there yet energy that I didn't see as a problem at the time. So I did practice a lot, and for a long time. At some point, I ended up surfing on a daily or every other day, and that for about 8 to 10 months, probably. And then one day, I broke my nose with my own board. Stupid mistake, just fell off my board, didn't protect my face properly, and my board hit me in the face. Obviously, there was a bit of trauma there, and I stopped surfing for a while, and then I got back into it after some months. Got back on a longboard for a couple of sessions, and after that, my teacher, the same teacher as before, told me, hey, how about you retry on that board that you broke your nose with, because you were pretty good at it. I wouldn't say good, but I was decent at it. And here I go and try again, and it happened again. I broke my nose a second time. And I guess the problem here, beyond the fact that I actually broke my nose, is that I treated it like it was bad luck, like it was an accident, something that happened to me almost externally, and I didn't really read it as a message. But looking back though, of course, after all this work that I've been doing on reconnecting with my body, I'm realizing that my body was actually giving me all the signals in the world. It was telling me very clearly that I was burning steps, that I was not ready for what I was trying to force. It was telling me to slow down, to not just downsize my board even though I was not fully comfortable on a longboard yet, to not take big waves even though I was not fully in control of what I was doing on smaller waves, all these things. And of course, I would not listen because the culture around me wasn't telling me to slow down. The culture was more to push through, to make progress, to level up. And yet it was so obvious seeing my body, how locked up it was, how stiff I was. And actually my teacher used to tell me quite often as a joke, he used to tell me, Charlotte, your hips are very stiff. They're still very stiff when you stand up on the board. And would laugh about it. It was more like a running joke, but it was very real. I've been posting a few videos of my surfing in the early days, and you can tell immediately how stiff my hips are, how locked up my hips are. My body was like so tight and holding on for dear life when it should have been really loose and flowing and responsive. And then I've mentioned it before, I got the burnout. It was not surfing related, but it was more everything related. But obviously it pulled me out of the water entirely. I didn't touch a board for about 2 years, and I didn't really get near the ocean in that way, just because it wasn't available to me anymore. So, and obviously my body had other things to deal with. And even though I'm about a year past the worst of it now, in all honesty, I'm still in it. I'm still recovering from the burnout, just doing so much better than a year ago. And of course, somewhere along this journey of recovery, during those 2 years of not surfing, something kind of rebuilt itself very slowly. And that was without me forcing it or trying to make it happen. But that time allowed me to look back on it and to really try to understand what actually happened. And I think what it is that we bring our performance mindset into the things that are supposed to heal us or to make us feel good. But then, of course, we wonder why we stop feeling good about them. And in the worst case scenarios, those things that are meant to make us feel, that are meant to recharge us, recharge our energy, they start feeling almost like another thing on our to-do lists. Because I'm sure you felt that before, whatever it is that you do, let's say that you do morning runs, I'm sure there's been days where you've had this weird pressure attached to it. I've felt that before, where there's a thing that you used to really love. It used to be pure joy, and now it feels like something that you need to be good at. Somehow it feels like we can't help it, like we turn everything into a project. It's like those before and after stories. And surfing, oh my God, surfing has this whole dynamic built in, because there's this kind of unspoken hierarchy, unspoken rule that longboard is for beginners and shortboard is where the real surfers are. It's changing a bit, obviously, like things are the mentality is starting to change a bit, but you do see a lot of those debates, longboarders versus shortboarders, because shortboards go with bigger waves, harder tricks, and also more impressive clips, videos. And I bought into it completely. I'm talking like I have this bigger picture understanding, but at the end of the day, I did buy into it completely. I had this image of myself, like a future version of me on a shortboard, looking cool. And somehow, unconsciously, of course, I was chasing that image. I was almost chasing an aesthetic of competence, of a skill. And that, of course, made me skip not only a lot of steps to get there, but it also made me skip the most important, which is the fun aspect to it. I read somewhere recently that surfers who actually move to shortboards too fast, they often never develop that real sense of glide. They miss it entirely because they jumped past the stage where you learn to actually feel the wave and that glide, that sense of gliding, and to work with that feeling rather than just, fighting it and remaining stiff on your board. And they go straight to the harder, more technical thing. And so they never really get that long, easy, kind of full body feeling of gliding. And of course, that made me think, because that's literally what I described I was doing. I was so focused on getting to the next level that I was going to skip the best part and the most important part in surfing, according to, actual experts. Obviously, as always, I'm taking a personal example from lived experience because that is how I click about certain things. But this is something that you can apply to many more things than surfing, because how many things in your life have you turned into something that's only about metrics and progression rather than fun and enjoying? Something that you started literally as play, as curiosity, to just feel good in your body. And then at some point, somewhere down the line, you added a goal to it. Some sort of like an image of yourself at a level that you haven't reached yet. And when you do that, the thing itself isn't the point anymore. You getting somewhere with it is the point. And of course, having goals is a good thing. It is good to want to improve in something, but it shouldn't be at the expense of having fun and of enjoying the thing you're doing for in the moment, for the thing, rather than for where you want to be. Because somewhere during those 2 years of surfing, I realized that actually I don't want bigger waves. I don't want a shortboard, at least not for a very long time. I want to be in the water. I want to feel the glide. that I was talking about. I want small, gentle waves and long rides and salt in my hair that I mentioned before. These are the important things to me. And if the progression comes from it, then even better. But goals are only a good thing if it actually aligns with what you want, not if it fits some sort of ideal image of you that you don't deep down care about. And I would go even one step further, because it might feel, when you actually admit to yourself that some of the goals that you've set for yourself are not what you deeply want, it might feel for a minute like you're giving up or like you're downgrading your ambitions, let's say. But I think it's actually the opposite, because more often than not, letting go of the performance is actually what's going to help you improve and make progress at what you love. And that is something, by the way, that most professional athletes do say in interviews when they're being asked how it all started for them. It all started with fun. Fun was what kept them going, just because they were enjoying what they were doing. Only years later came the sense of discipline and of ambitious goals. And then, of course, there's the body part, the body piece that I can't ignore, because 2 broken noses was obviously not bad luck. My body was clearly out of alignment with what I was demanding from it. Like I said, my hips were completely locked up. I was trying to force a pace that wasn't mine. And as a consequence, I was overriding every signal that my body was sending, because the goal in my head had become louder than the feeling in my body, which is something that sadly I had across the board in every areas of my life, because obviously Burnout did the exact same thing that the broken nose did for surfing, just in a different context. It was the same pattern. I pushed, I overrode, I ignored, and then eventually I crashed. So looking back, it was pretty clear to me that my body has been consistently sending me all the signals, all the messaging this whole time. It was just me not listening. Obviously, during those 2 years, I've been doing a lot of hip work, a lot of body reconnection, a lot of embodiment, a lot of learning to actually feel what's happening in my body and not just listen to my mind. And now that I'm very excited to be back to surfing soon, I'm genuinely curious about what that's going to look like on the board. And by look like, I actually mean feel like. And I don't mean that I have any expectations from it. I'm not expecting to have any sort of massive progress or anything. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to be back to close to zero. But I'm curious. I'm wondering if my body is going to feel different now that I've actually spent the time with it instead of dragging it through a performance. And I have to say, it's a great feeling, because that curiosity about how my body's going to feel, it just feels very, very different from the urgency that I used to have. I'm switching from I need to get better, I need to improve, I need to look like a certain way, to more like I wonder what this is going to feel like and how it's going to serve the fun that I want to have with it. And that's enough. I actually think that a lot of us are actually stuck in what I'd call a gentle cult. Almost. I don't mean it in a sinister way, obviously. What I mean is that the way that we can be in this belief system for so long, we don't even see it is a belief system anymore. So for instance, you just start whatever activity, surfing, let's stick to surfing. Very quickly, usually, the culture around the thing that you're starting or that you enjoy tells you what success looks like, what progress looks like, what you should want out of it. Because me wanting to be on a surfboard was not just out of nowhere, right? It's a lot of the culture around surfing that kind of highlights shortboarders over longboarders, although things are evolving, of course. And so usually you just absorb it. You absorb what the culture is telling you. You adopt the goals of the culture without ever checking whether they're your goals. So in my case, I wanted the shortboard because everyone wants the shortboard. You could want a faster time because the app that's tracking your running is giving you those challenging goals. And so sometimes that's why I compare it to a gentle cult. What it takes is to pull out of it, to see the culture and to step away from it, to be able to see it for what it is. That's obviously what I did. In my case, it wasn't a choice. The burnout pulled me out of it, but from the outside, from that distance, I could finally see it. I could see that dynamic, the whole thing, the whole picture. And I could see that performance layer that I had put over something that was supposed to be just about feeling good in my body. Maybe it's going to sound like I'm overthinking this whole thing, and that would be very much on brand. But that may be a question that you can ask yourself. If you pick something that you actually do regularly, that you care about, something that's supposed to be for you. And if you ask yourself honestly, am I doing this because it feels good or because I'm trying to get somewhere? If you're questioning yourself about the goals that you set for yourself, whether they're your goals or the goals from the culture around it, you may actually notice that there may be an image of yourself at a better level that's driving the whole thing, a future version of you that you're chasing. And if that's the case, maybe ask yourself if where you are right now is not enough. Maybe where you are right now is the thing itself. It's not just a means to an end. And when I remind myself that, I keep coming back to the glide in my mind, that feeling of surfing that I mentioned earlier, that instead of fighting with your surfing skills, instead of, locking your hips up, you catch a wave and you're just moving with it. Your body is loose and the water is doing most of the work and you're just present. And that feeling exists in everything. And I'm sure that that necessity of feeling the glide before skipping some important steps is something that can apply to so many more activities and so many things that we love. I'm finally about to get back in the water for the first time in 2 years, so wish me luck. Because honestly, I'm a bit scared. Now I've got some fear of the waves that I didn't used to have, because 2 broken noses will do that. But I'm also excited in a way that feels very clean and very peaceful, because it's not contaminated by ambition anymore. I just want to be out there. I just want to go out there on a big, friendly longboard and in small, very gentle waves. And what I'm going to focus on is the glide. And I do hope that you find the glide in whatever you love.